Welcome to the Brokers Lounge with Eddie and Carlo.
Welcome to another episode of the Brokers Lounge. This time I'm joined by one of my favorite human beings, Baz Gardner. Baz, he's a mentor, a deep thinker when it comes down to human behavior, mindset, and purpose. And above all that, he's a very good human being and a good friend of mine. And I'm super excited to have you, Baz, on the podcast today. Before we get to it, how you doing?
Mate, doing pretty good, thank you. That was a very nice thing to say, Eddie. Thank you.
It's only true.
I felt it, mate, and likewise.
Thanks, mate.
Doing very well, but like I was saying before we clicked record, just getting back into a bit of an exercise program after going through a bit of change in my lifestyle. So kids are grown up. My wife and I moved to the country, so that took about 18 months of finishing renovating our massive property in Brisbane, selling it, moving all of the stuff, setting up a farm. So whilst I've been doing plenty of physical activity, hadn't been doing the formal exercise. So I'm feeling pretty sore today, mate.
I'm not gonna ask you to do any physical exercise.
Yeah, I
on the
won't.
podcast.
I won't be
We'll stick to
standing
talking.
up or sitting down.
So today's podcast, we will try and dive into something that doesn't get talked about enough in real estate and investing in general, and that's the emotions behind every decision we make. And really, that applies to not just investing in property, that applies to everyday decisions we make. So it's whether you're buying, selling your property, the tension between the investment and the lifestyle choices that we make, and the importance of understanding what's your real purpose in life before you make a move or a decision. So we'll break that down on why decisions aren't just about numbers and why getting clear on your intention is everything. There's a lot to uncover there. It's one of my favorite, and I know it's one of your favorite places to dive into. So let's get into it. So Baz, if we are to start, why do you think emotions play such a huge role in buying or selling decisions, even when we think we're being rational or reasonable?
So if it's okay, Eddie, I kind of like to answer, and I know you know this already because we've hung out a fair bit. I like to answer things in circles. So I'm going to take a little bit of a detour in giving the answer. And that's just to give everyone just a little bit of context for, my background. So I've had a lot of businesses and I've advised a lot of businesses over the last, 3 decades. But they've all primarily focused around advice. So with either delivering advice or certainly me being someone who delivers advice. So, being a financial advisor, being in and around finance broking in my earlier career, and then business advisory, and now a cross between, all of those things. So a lot of what I do now is work with business owners and their senior team members to help create better performance outcomes. And it's interesting because one of the key benefits of good advice is objectivity. And so the first thing that I'd start out by saying is that it's very difficult to be objective about your own monetary decisions. It's very difficult to be objective about your business. It's very difficult to be objective about, your relationships in life. And so I guess a core part of this is it's very helpful to have someone be an advisor to you who can be objective. Also, someone can be a mentor or a friend or whatever, because sometimes you can't see your own biases. And so that's really what I've focused my life on doing, is being that objective party for other people around all of those areas in life, money, personal, etc. To me, there's no line between, work, business, and personal life. You only have one life, so everything needs to interconnect. And people definitely get hang-ups about where the lines fit and how they all fit together. And to be honest, this comes into play in all places when it comes to money, but it most definitely does when it comes to, borrowing money and buying property. So whether it is investment or, lifestyle, and to me, objectivity isn't really dependent on investment and lifestyle. It's just you've got different value criteria for each decision that you should be prioritizing if you're being objective. And
True.
so to come and then delve to getting to the bringing the circle round to answer your questions. What is emotion is a good question, right? So emotion is energy in motion. That's what it actually means. So, of course, we all have emotion because we all put energy into motion. But what most people are thinking about when they say, "Oh, getting emotional," or "I'm emotional about it," what they're really describing is the extremes, and usually the negative extreme, right? So I'm being upset, I'm being fearful, I'm being, overcommitted or overexcited. But that's just the summary of the outcome. What are you putting your energy into? And so the way I look at it is your energy in alignment or is it out of alignment? Because you can get carried away with your energy, right?
Right.
But undirected energy doesn't manifest what you actually want in life. So if your energy is coming from a conflicted state and being put into motion, then your decisions are not going to deliver you what you actually want in life, or at least not in the right balance or what you're hoping for.
True.
And it's very difficult to do that. Hence, I think this is a valuable conversation, right? And so over the decades, I've seen many people making decisions about property. And there are a whole lot of biases that come into play that affect their decision making, which then determines what they're putting their energy into. So that's partly how I would describe it, right?
Perfect. So if we are to capitalize on what you just said,
Mm-hmm.
so the core of making that decision is putting the right intention into it, and that will flow into the right emotion, and that will manifest in the right way. So if you're buying a property or investment, because like we want to stick to the property and investing side of things, even though it can apply to everything in life.
Of course, it does scales across everything.
It does. So what would be the right intention if you are looking to buy a property or invest in general?
Okay, well, I'm going to delve a little deeper to kind of get to, at least in my definition, what intent is, right? So breaking that down, and in order to do that, and again, this is my own framework that I've developed after working with, for tens of thousands of hours with, thousands of people. So everyone might attach different meaning, which is why I'm clarifying my meaning for some of these things, right? So the way I see it is there's 4 primary mechanisms that we interact with our reality. Okay, so if we think about the right-hand side and the left-hand side, so on the right-hand side, you've got 2 sides of a coin. And on one side, you have emotion. On the other side, you have intuition. So emotion is your energy in motion. Intuition is your knowing that doesn't require conceptual thinking. So one of the things I'll often ask people is, I did this and I did that, and the other person did this and this happened, and, I'm frustrated. What do I do? Well, my answer is, well, firstly, if I'm trying to give them input on their side of the equation, my question is, were you the best version of you in this conversation? And it's interesting because if I apply thought or logic, which are on the left-hand side, 2 sides of the same coin, thought and logic, right? If I were asking them to think about, their responsibility, they might have a very difficult time. But if I ask them what would their best version of their self have done, everyone can answer. And so that is a deeper intuition. It's a connection to knowing and understanding, right? So that's how I would describe it. Thought is the raw materials of imagination, the universe, conceptualizing the reality that we exist in, right? So thoughts are unbounded. And the way I describe that is, think about daydreaming. Well, you're thinking a lot, right? But is it structured? And if you just go into the daydream, it's going to be skipping and moving all around over the place. So it's not structured. Thought is unstructured. Logic, on the other hand, is thought turned into structure. So process, framework, scaffolding, etc.
Conclusions.
Yeah. So logic is great at solving problems, is one way I would describe it, right?
Yeah.
But logic is terrible at actually understanding what problems to solve. Okay. So you can have very logical people making very irrational decisions because they're spending all of their logic time on the wrong problems. And so is logic more powerful than intuition? No. It's not. It's not about which one is better. It's about understanding the different framework. And then what I would describe is sitting in the middle of that is your feelings. Okay? So
So feelings and emotions are different.
they're different, yes.
Okay.
So how you feel at any one point in time is going to be a sum of
Or the
where
thought.
where your emotions, thought, logic, and intuition is at.
Yep. It's
So
like the atom, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. In fact, you
Yeah.
can draw it that way. So in some ways, people mistake feeling and emotions as the same thing, right? And that is because they may be having high swings of emotion. And so that's overshadowing and overcoloring feeling because it's all being weighted towards emotion. But how you feel at any point in time is a summary of where you're at on those four other things.
Mm.
Okay. So intent is your direction.
Yep.
What am I directing my intent to be? What is my outcome? And if you are unclear in your intent, then typically, if you invest your energy into something you're unclear about, well, you'll get an unclear manifestation,
Destination.
right? Yeah, you get an unclear destination, right? So to answer the question in a little, bringing that framework together, intent is important because it sets the direction for everything else, right? What is your intent for your thought, logic, intuition and emotion? What are you trying to do? And so what happens is, and why people tend to make flawed decisions when they're buying property, is because they're not clear on their intent first. What are you actually trying to do? And in order to be clear on your intent, you have to understand trade-off. So in any aspects of life and a circumstance, there's always a trade-off.
True.
I mean, that's the beauty of choice.
Yes.
If there wasn't trade-off, you would have no freedom of choice. So in order to be clear on your intent, you need to know what it is that's most important to you and what you're actually trying to accomplish.
And be
And
happy to pay the price for it.
yes, and understand what the trade-off is.
Exactly.
And if you don't understand that, then you'll end up getting a mixed result. So
Yes.
what does this all mean and how does it translate? Well, maybe let's use some examples, right?
Let's go for it.
So was talking to a financial advisor client, probably about three weeks ago. And we've got a client scenario, right? So they're running the client scenario past me. So husband and wife, they're coming up to retirement, couple of daughters. They've got reasonable assets. $3 or $4 million. By the same token, spending, like, they're earning good dollars now, but so $4 million would give someone a pretty comfortable retirement if they're operating on a normal budget. Okay. It would give a very comfortable retirement, but they've been living on a champagne lifestyle budget, right? So not only that, and in the consideration, part of that $4 million is, currently in property and other bits and pieces. And so one of the things they've said is, well, we want to maintain the house we've got. Well, that's in a very expensive suburb, right? So that's making up a pretty decent chunk of the dollars. Okay, fine. Well, why? For starters, why do you want to stay there? And we'll delve into that in a second, right? And our daughter lives, this was actually someone based in Perth. So our daughter lives, down south on the beach. It's 2.5 hours, something like that. So what we want to do is also buy a holiday home near our daughter so we can go and see her. Now, without doing the maths, I can tell you very straightforwardly that if they did that and they maintain their lifestyle they have, it's not feasible. They're going to run out of money very quickly. But even using that property as an example, so what they're saying is, well, no, it'll be an investment because we'll do it as an Airbnb. Okay. And so this is something that I see happen a lot. People kind of hedging their bets for their intent. Well, is it an investment or is it a holiday home? And then why? Because if you're being objective about it, is it the best property to buy in the best location to get the best rental yield and capital growth? Nice. That's an investment, right? Or is it the most flexible way for you to be able to go and visit your daughter that fits within your budget? Well, potentially the answer is no to either of, the answer is definitely no to either of those questions, right?
Yep.
Because if that was the case, it would be really simple. When you go and visit your daughter, use someone else's Airbnb and take that money and have it invested in the optimal way.
True.
And that will get you not only a much better outcome, but it also helps you achieve what your true intent is. And that is, I don't want to work anymore. I'm getting older. I want to be able to retire.
Yep.
So intent in this scenario is very confused and mixed together. Yeah. And then if we go one step further, the house is worth a lot of dollars. So they could move to the outskirts of town, or they could downsize from, the penthouse to the 2-bedroom. Or they could move off the water and get a house or whatever, right? So why are they there? And why do they spend to that level? And so digging into that, a lot of it is because they're trying to impress their friendship circle.
Of course, yeah.
So their friends are people, so they live in the area that, typically much wealthier people live in, and their friends are much wealthier, and they're trying to keep up with the proverbial Joneses. So then is what you really want to be able to spend time with your family, have a good retirement, stop working, or is it that you've got something to prove for people that you've got in this group? Is it your self-worth image? And so their plan that they currently have is a bad one, because all of the financial decisions are compromised by an unclear intent.
Which is not theirs, by the way.
No, well, I mean, what does
external?
Yeah, external. Yeah. So you've heard me say this before. Anything we attach our self-worth to that is external to ourselves means that you've given up your self-worth to something you don't control, which means you've essentially lost power over your self-worth.
True.
So in this particular instance, they're measuring a chunk of their self-worth against the perception of their friends. Well, they don't control that.
I would take that a step further as well, and sometimes attaching to stuff that's internal to you can be deadly as well. Telling ourselves a story and just attaching everything to it and going with it, and then you just need to realize that changes all the time. So I think attachment
Yeah,
Either way.
absolutely. It's attachment is definitely at the core of a lot of our biases, right? So having an attachment to an outcome instead of the input, right?
Exactly.
You can't control the output, you can control the input. So
That's
when I
it.
say internal, what I mean is the best version of you, your aligned intent. So you might be internalizing the thought process, but in doing so, you're thinking about
Results.
measure, external measurement triggers or external results. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So that's what I mean by. So can you control what they think of you? No. I mean, arguably, would you even want to?
Yeah.
Are you going to
True.
base your entire happiness in your retirement around what other people think of you?
Exactly. And if they're truly your friends, they don't care where you live and what house or how much you're worth.
And if they do care, then is that really who you want to be hanging out with?
Exactly.
So, in other words, this goes deeper than, well, what kind of lifestyle do you actually want? Because at the moment, you're saying you want to achieve all of these things and here's how you're going to do it. And mathematically it doesn't add up, it won't work. And if you're not willing to confront your own intent conflicts, then you're going to keep making bad decisions and you'll get to live with the causality of
Consequence.
that. Yeah, the
Yeah,
consequence of that.
absolutely.
So,
That's like that is really where we're like putting the finger on why people make decisions and why people, choose to overextend sometimes, and sometimes they choose to like play it more safe, a lot more safe, because sometimes fear is at the core of it. So in this example you gave, it was more about external validation. Now, if we go to the other side where fear controls certain people, where
well,
they don't want to make the
it's
investment.
still fear, Eddie. So what I would say is that
Yeah.
if we kind of look at the hierarchy of self-worth and the programs that we run, so the first thing I would say is every action we take is either based in love or fear. Okay. So to help people understand what I mean a little more, acceptance is at the core of this, self-acceptance. So the ultimate form of love is acceptance. And the
Yeah.
ultimate form of acceptance is self-acceptance, right?
Hmm.
If you want to be able to love someone completely, you first have to be able to love yourself completely, right? And the
Absolutely.
degree to which you can do that determines the degree to which you can accept someone else. It's
True.
just 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah.
So it's either acceptance or fear, love or fear. And the way I would describe that is it's always a self-worth thing. What we've attached our self-worth to is determining how we allow fear or rejection of self to drive us.
Yeah.
So in that particular example, the decision about impressing people is still fear driven.
Yeah. True.
It's what if I'm not enough? What if I'm not good enough? And they're
Yes.
measuring themselves against these other people and against an ideal they've created for themselves, which isn't a reflection of who they really are.
True.
So it's a
At the core
fear
of it, it
of
is.
not
Yes.
being good enough. It's a fear of not being enough.
Yes. True. True. But also, the way I meant it, like at the core of it, it is absolutely fear. But the fear of making the step to invest or to
Yeah.
spend or to take that extra step. Because, like, at the end of the day, there's a reality. If you want to achieve wealth, which is a part of the game that we've got,
Yeah.
you have to take risk. You have to invest. You have to pay some money in the short term in the hope that this money will pay
Yeah. Well, you
dividends
don't get a
in the future.
return without making an investment,
Exactly.
right?
So some people underinvest,
Yeah,
if that's a term.
absolutely. And and as you were saying, it's still fear driven, right?
Yeah.
So it's so if you've got capital and you're not utilizing it, right? Well, it might be a misalignment, right? So obviously people who accumulate wealth will typically use leverage to do so, right? Especially in the environment that we're in and likely to be in, where asset prices continue to rise,
Yeah.
right? So you can just have your property and think that your wealth is going up, but it isn't, right?
Yeah.
it isn't, because what your dollars can buy if you sell it hasn't changed at all.
Yeah.
So it only happens if you can create leverage. But then there is all kinds of fears that can come into play when people think about that. It's like, oh, I'm borrowing money. Well, that's increasing my risk. And of course, it is increasing risk.
Yep.
But if you are too fearful, then you will make bad decisions. And if you're too excited, that's also being fearful, right? In a completely different way, then you're going to make bad decisions.
It's the opposite side of the same coin, I guess.
Yeah, and this is why I say it's very difficult to be objective about where you are at on these things. So, even though I've been doing this for 30 years for other people, I still bounce all of my decisions against other people.
Yeah.
I still do,
100%.
because it wouldn't be rational otherwise, and they help me to see what my biases are or where my intent is misaligned.
True. It's so hard to see your own blind spots, and
Absolutely.
having someone in your life that you can explicitly explain what you're thinking and what your rationale is. That's, I guess, this is the biggest investment you can have in life, having that person. And then after that, you can jump onto financial investments.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, property has a tendency to exacerbate this even further, right?
Yeah.
Especially in Australia, there's this whole mindset around property, property ownership, what it looks like, what it means, the physical asset, and so buying a house, it's, again, you've got this, well, we would like what we would like now.
Yeah.
So you have the bias towards today versus delayed gratification, or the bias towards tomorrow.
Yes.
So often people they'll overreach on their lifestyle properties. They go way too far, way too early, way too hard. So they overreach there. Now they're completely committed. They're overextended. So they're now
100%.
in a position where they're not able to use leverage for investment, which is what's actually going to create wealth for them. They're not. So a lot of people make the mistake of buying a property is creating wealth. Well, no, it's just helping you maintain the value. So
Yes.
it's helping you get into the property market, but then it's just helping you maintain the value. So I don't know how many people I've advised through these stages of their life, how many people actually do a downsize? So my house is worth 2 million. So I'm going to sell it in retirement and buy something worth 1 million. How many times does that actually happen?
Yeah. I don't know. You've been long enough. I've been 10 years, so
Almost
I haven't seen
never.
many. Yeah.
Almost never.
Yeah. 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 True. True.
One of the things I was proud of when my wife and I moved to the farm was, we upgraded our lifestyle.
Or
But
cheaper.
I'm going to use myself as the example here, right?
Yeah.
So, we had a big, I guess a lot of people have called it a mansion, 36 different rooms. It was 10 bedrooms. So it was a big house, right? Don't get me wrong. We bought it was run down. We renovated it over, the time we're there, and we raised all of our kids, and, it was fantastic. But then it came to the decision of, well, where do we go to next? And it would have been very easy for me to go, well, we can sell this for X amount. And then in the looking around, you inflate what you want.
True.
So it would be very easy to then, and this is what most people do, just spend the same amount of money,
Yes.
because you have to understand compromise. So yeah, we literally spent half as much on where we plan to stay for the,
Yeah.
for leading into at least the later stages of our retirement. So I know all the way on that journey, I was very tempted to go, oh yeah, but, and then just dial the number up.
Yeah.
And I had advisors. So we had a game plan. I knew what I was going to spend, and I knew what my intent was.
Yep.
Now, could I afford to have spent twice as much? Yes. But the consequences of that didn't fit with the other things that I would like to be able to do. Help my kids get into property,
True.
as an example.
True.
So I guess this is really important, and I see it all of the time. Seeing the couple at an auction, right? And listening into them as they're bidding, and listening into their reserve. Reserves 1.2, we can't afford any more than that. And then panicking at 1.3.
Yeah.
And then making a bid at 1.32.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Now, I'm just using an example from when I was at an auction looking at an investment property. But I was just paying attention, as I always do. And I'm thinking to myself, I could tell that the 1.2 was already going to stress these guys financially. So they've created a commitment in their minds that they can't miss out on. But at what consequence?
Absolutely. Years of pain.
And conversely, Eddie, a bit like you were describing, the underinvestment, and then seeing people who are so afraid of taking risk,
yes,
that they get to retirement and they're only going to be able to live on the pension, or maybe a small combination of other assets.
True.
Not because they didn't earn enough dollars, but because they weren't objective enough about
100%.
risk.
And I guess if we are to put this into practicality, it is practical enough. But if we just summarize it, it's best if you learn how to do these things on your own to a certain extent. But this also highlights the importance of working with professionals that can
100%.
provide this value. And it's not just about the numbers or getting you the finance approval or writing you a plan. It's just having those hard conversations with your clients and telling them, are you overextending, or are you under investing, and everything in between, and allowing people to actually think about these things and go into the deeper level of why I'm doing what I'm doing and understanding it. So it's very important.
Yeah,
I
what
guess.
I'd say is, right, that, and I've already said this about, you can't be objective yourself. So get input. And I personally think that one of the biggest mistakes people may make is not paying for advice.
Yeah.
All right. So not paying to get advice. Now, part of the reason they don't pay to get advice is because they're afraid, right? Am I going to get ripped off? Are they going to give me? So what you're looking for in an advisor, I would say, is someone who is actually asking you the hard questions.
Yes.
If they're not telling you things you don't want to hear, or asking you questions that are uncomfortable, then all they're really doing is taking your order.
Confirmation bias.
Yeah, if they're taking your order, then they haven't helped you clear your intent.
100%, 100%. And that's, I guess, the moral obligation on an advisor. It's to stick to that and always bring the hard questions, regardless if you are going to lose that client, or they're not going to be happy, or they're not going to refer you to someone because they're not ready to hear the truth. But as a moral obligation, you always need to push for the hard questions, as long as you're being objective, of course, and giving the right
absolutely.
advice.
As long as it's with compassion, without judgment.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been doing for people, my whole life.
Exactly.
But I also want to say to other people, I pay for it myself.
Yeah.
If I didn't, I wouldn't believe in what I do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I can be very objective about your scenario and not very objective about my scenario.
Yes.
It's really straightforward. So some practical things that I would say to viewers, right?
To wrap this up, I guess, as well. We're running
Well,
a bit.
practice. What are some practical steps that they can take into account here, right? Well, firstly, what you need to do, and this is a really simple one, and I do it for everything, write down the pros and cons, right? It's not difficult. It's not rocket science, but you might do it in your head there is something to be said for writing it down. And there's something to be said. So you're probably going to get 80% of the benefit by doing it on a spreadsheet or a document. But physically writing it, when it comes to these tiebreaker decisions, I'll do them on the computer because I like to, do my analysis and assign weights, but I'll still also write it down.
Yep.
So the physicality and the mind link I find helps, but that's maybe only a 5 to 10% tweak. So type it out, put it in a spreadsheet, write it down, pros and cons. And then you have to look at which are the things that are your must-haves and which of the things that aren't really that necessary, that are just nice to have.
Yes.
So that's one way that helps me be objective in the first place. And the second thing is, even after I've done that, I still take it to someone else. Now, am I always paying for advice? No. So I will structure this and I'll take it to my wife, right? If it's a smaller decision, take it to my wife. Here's the list of things. And then she can question me on that. I've got good friends like yourself, Eddie. If I want to bounce something off you, I can run it by you. And I know you'll ask me tricky questions. So do that yourself. Make sure you're writing it down. Make sure you're aware of what is actually most important to you and what the trade-offs are and which trade-offs you're not prepared to make. But if your answer is everything's important and I'm not prepared to make any trade-offs, then you're completely BSing yourself.
True.
Okay. So, and then at the end of the day, go to other people. And if it's about your bigger term strategy, etc., look, I think pay for advice. I certainly do.
100%. 100%. Well, look, we can go for forever, I guess. Like we usually sit for small chats and end up talking for 2 or 3 hours. But is there anything else you think we can add to this today?
So I'm just kind of thinking through maybe some examples of the biases and things that people go through. I think I've given a bunch of them. Especially just remember that there's differences in male and female as well. So if you're buying a property as a couple, this is also really important. It's difficult to be objective about your own biases, but then you combine a couple together. Right. And this is why they say money is the cause of most arguments in a relationship. So I would say you both need to go through the process of writing down the pros and cons, which things are most relevant, etc. And then ideally, you're going to have someone else with both of you ask you the hard questions.
Yes.
Because what a lot of couples do is they haven't done this, and then they get to the auction and she's saying, we can't miss out. I can't go forward without this property.
I love
And
the kitchen.
he's done the numbers and he's like, and afterwards I was kind of looking at him and he said, happy wife, happy life. And I'm like, well, no, that's not. Well, there's some truth in that, but there's also some falseness in how you've used it.
It's more false than true.
So you both have to be clear with each other. And so
100%.
that is really important. And property is an emotional decision because you are making a commitment and your biases come into play. So all of those other things come forward in your energy.
Yes.
So if you haven't been clear through intuition, thought, and logic first, if I think about those 4 things, I call it the harmonic cycle. If you're stuck, go to intuition first, then think about it, then structure it with logic. Don't put your energy into motion until you've taken it through the other 3 things first.
Yeah. And a lot of people are just reacting on the spot to a lot of things that are happening. And they can be very important decisions in life that will impact how they're going to be in the next 10, 20, 30 years. So it's really important understanding the importance of these decisions and try to make it at the best, time possible with the best input you've got. You can't control what's going to happen, but at least have the clearest
Yeah,
vision before
be
making that
clear,
decision.
be clear, and just remember, no return comes without risk.
That's it.
So you don't want to over risk, but also you don't want to not take risk.
That's it.
And I think people get confused because one of the biggest reason people fail in investment decisions is they don't take any.
Yes.
You get no returns if you've executed no decisions.
100%.
Yes, you didn't fail in any, but you end up failing completely
life.
overall. Yeah.
Which is the biggest investment
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
test. Baz, I love you, man. It's
Love you
always
too,
great
mate.
to have a chat with you. I guess, yeah, at the end of the day, any decision you make in life, whether it's investment in property, investment in shares, investing in a partner in your life, whatever that is, there's an emotional aspect to it, plus all the other aspects that Baz discussed today. So it's very important to understand our biases, our blind spots, and I guess if we take one thing out of it, find yourself a good person, advisor to run these decisions with, especially the financial decisions with, where they can ask you the right questions, the hard questions, and you need to be able to answer them before making a move on something that will impact you and your children potentially. So, Baz, thanks once again.
A pleasure, Eddie.
We'll definitely do this again, maybe on a different topic. But
if anyone cares to ask me a question or reach out, LinkedIn's probably the best way to go. It's just Baz Gardner. I have this amazing thing where if you have the courage to ask me something, I'll answer it. So it's just pretty straightforward.
I encourage it.
Thanks, mate. Really enjoyed the time and happy to hang out with you anytime.
Thanks, Baz. Likewise. Thank you for listening or watching to this. As usual, please subscribe and send through any questions that you might have to me or Baz. You can find them on LinkedIn. Until then, have a great one and see you next time. Thank you. Bye.
Disclaimer. The information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into account your personal circumstances.